sail, and the thing is, like, when you're on a boat, a lot of people are just uncomfortable sitting on a deck. Like, Tyler, you've gone sailing with me, and the boat kind of heels over, and people get really squeamish when that happens. But when you're 60 feet up,
it's
really think about how far you're swinging. I did the math, and I guess we were swinging 85 feet in each direction every 4 seconds or something. It's kind of crazy to kind of look at it on paper afterwards.
That's crazy, like a metronome.
Yeah. It was a metronome you couldn't predict. And then the ship though would climb up over a wave and then go down and hit the trough, and it would be like hitting a brick wall. We had this 500-ton ship that all of a sudden would just shake and rumble.
What is going through your mind on this? Are you like never doing this again? Are you like just so focused? Are you doubting yourself? Like, I'm curious, like what's going through your head during this?
So I'm doing this, and I'm scared out of my mind. Yeah. I am this is the scariest thing I have ever done. And the chief mate of the ship was my watch officer, and Tony was, God, he was like the hero, the greatest leader I've ever met in my entire life. He was so dialed into just doing his job right. And I'd say, like, he instilled in me so many methods of how to inspire people and how to lead. And that happened up there. I don't know why he asked me to go up, and I didn't know. I know now. But just the fact that he picked me gave me a sense of confidence to not let my fear overtake me. Like, I thought, well, if Tony asked me to come up, he must have felt that I knew I would have what it would take to do it. But getting up there and having that sail blasting around and rolling around, that was the scary part. Because then we had to sort of like hop on this sail that's flogging and filling with all this wind and energy. It's like having a compact car flopping around, and we had to jump on it like a bull at a rodeo. And you had to like punch it as hard as you could to try and deflate the wind out of it so you could wrap yourself around it. And it was intense. It was intense. I can't say that we do that and it all works out. When we get down to the deck, we get back down to deck, and it didn't seem like the boat was moving that much anymore after going up there. Then everything seemed calm.
What did you do then after that? Like, did you just like take that girl that was on the ship and like, I'm going back to my cabin now, or you?
Well, it was actually.
Did you go have a lot to drink? Did you have a lot to drink after?
You can't drink underway. It's a dry boat.
Wow.
And I think that storm for me was one of the pillars of my principles, and like it built like my biggest pillar of principles. Where when you're out there, you can't turn it off. You can't pull over and park. You can't drop your anchor.
Yeah.
You can't do anything. You have to go from start to finish. And that sort of, I think, flushes out people. Either you're going to be that person who can see something from start to finish or not. I will say, though, that it was that experience that inspired me the next day to then say to that girl, would you like to share your bunk with me? And I was going to blame her saying no and laugh it off as me just saying, "No, I'm just probably still messed up from climbing a loft yesterday."
Did you feel somewhat invincible after that, or do you feel like traumatized? Like, I'm curious, like, what, where do you go from an experience like that? Like, I know, like with big wave surfers, there's a big adrenaline rush, and I imagine many of them have felt like, quite invincible after, and some, kind of get depressed. What was your experience, after doing something of that kind of feat? Were you able to come down after that normally?
So when I got back down to the deck, I definitely felt like I had like a huge adrenaline crash. And I don't know if it's because, I'd only gotten like maybe an hour of sleep in the last 24 hours, just the energy it took to get up there and do what we had to do and then get back down. Today, I don't look for moments like that. I don't look for that rush.
Yeah.
I've never looked for that rush. I have a respect for it, and if I had to do it again, I would do it without flinching. But I mean, yeah, that crash afterwards was kind of almost like going into shock a little bit, I thought.
Really?
I'm sure that there's people out there that think it's great and exciting and would love to do it as many times as they can, but there's a reason why on modern boats you don't free climb anymore. It's completely been designed out of boating.
Yeah.
Sailing ships, no one climbs up aloft. That's just not what happens.
How did you manage that crash? Because you're on the boat. There's nowhere for you to go.
I think I managed the crash by smoking a bunch of cigarettes. and after I probably had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and started telling jokes again with everyone. Humor became definitely our platform of survival through the passage. So,
and you saw this all the way through to, you had to sail it from Rhode Island to California, basically. And, you know, what was it like then having to leave that boat? You know, it's
so I'm gonna before the thing is we get to Puerto Rico, and I'm gonna answer your question, but I think it's almost like things then kept getting worse, and we go from
well,
we go
didn't
from
like
Puerto
the
Rico,
toilet stop working or broke off or something like that?
Yeah. The toilet on a boat is called the head, and that had gotten in the storm ripped. One of the heads got ripped off. And we had this vacuum seal system that couldn't seal then, so it sort of opened up. That all your excrement goes into this tank called a black tank. That's where it's all stored, and then it gets pumped overboard. And well, that just sort of opened a vent into the interior of the boat, so that everyone. It was like someone's just shaking up that black can. All that awful stuff in it. And it's all just that smell's just coming up, and you know there's no
well, at least you can just fart wherever you want, and you know no one can really blame it on you, you know, but jeez.
The thing is, as the journey went on, more and more terrible things happened to the ship. I think the worst that really jumps out sort of more than going up in that storm was we experienced a dismasting, which means that's when your masts break.
Oh, shit.
So we were in the middle of the ocean and we had all our sails set, and it was about an hour before sunset, and we had one mast explode and cause sort of like a domino effect of other things breaking, and that's bad. That's bad.
How does it explode? Did it just break from the wind, or was there a lot of pressure? Like, and then how do you fix that?
So it exploded because what was deemed was there was a repair made to it years prior that might have been failing. Sort of like a compilation of issues. We had to, in that first storm, we had sustained some serious damage to the ship structurally, which we had to rush to repair. I had to rush to repair with another shipmate while we were in Puerto Rico, and there was concern that maybe the rig was not tuned properly after that. And we were sailing. We had these big rollers behind us. We're on our way to Panama, and a rogue wave hit the ship and drove it up, and we changed sort of our wind angle, and this compounding of probabilities sort of all came together and caused the explosion.
Gosh.
And yeah.
So then you're just stranded, basically?
Well, that goes back to kind of where we all had to be self-reliant. No, we actually we could not strike the sails, which means take them down, because there was concern that what happened was the mast explodes. So we still got some sails up on some of our masts because the boat has 3 masts, and then each mast is made up of a different section as well. So what we had to do was, again, Tony grabbed me and told me to go aloft, and I went up the one mast with two of the officers, and he went up another mast with another officer. And from up there, it was determined that if we took the sails down and just motored, that we would change the way the rig was loaded. And we didn't have enough time before the sun was setting, so we had to strategically cut certain parts of the rig down and keep the sails up at night, which that was kind of nutty and nerve-wracking to be up there and go, I'm 100 feet up in the air, and I was really kind of having to look down and think, like, okay, if this falls over, where do I jump to either die the fastest, or if I could try and like catch something and slide off into the water somehow.
Oh my God. How do you fix something like that then? Like how
So
do you...
what we had to do was identify what we needed to do to just get through the evening, because again, we were out in the middle of the ocean and nobody was going to be able to come help us, and we cut down a bunch of broken rigging, and then other parts we had some of the spars, which are the mast, like the wood components of the mast, we had to tie them to other parts to get through the night. And then the next day when sunlight came up, we had more time to ascertain how to systematically start to break things down carefully so we get to Panama safely. And then when we got to Panama, Hollywood, being the owner of the ship, lined up the biggest crane I've ever seen in my life come, and we spent 2 days deconstructing the rig so we could continue the rest of the journey from Panama to San Diego.
Oh my gosh. Did you get to at least stay on as like an advisor for the film, Master and Commander, or anything?
No. As the journey proceeded, I fell out of love with the idea of working on the production of the movie, and my relationship was blooming and turning into a nice romantic relationship, and we sort of had decided that we just did the real thing and we didn't want to make a movie about how to do it. So I was cast and offered an opportunity to stay, and I stayed for a few months as a shipwright to prepare the ship for the production of the movie. But no, I got offered a job back east on the boat I had been on in Europe. It had been shipped to America, and I thought I'd rather actually go back and do that. So
That's crazy. And now this book, is it specifically the Rose, or do you dive into other areas of sailing as well? Because it seems like there's a little bit of a tutorial about sailing. As I'm reading it, I'm learning a bit more about it. But what's kind of the focus here then?
The focus of this book is about my journey on the Rose from Newport to California. It does open with me describing the best day of my life in southern France in Saint-Tropez, to kind of give the reader a little bit of an insight as to...
Second or third best, because you are married to my cousin and you have my niece, you have a daughter, so just saying.
I'm going to say top three.
Top five, top three, top five, top five, something like that, I don't want to get you in trouble with Alicia.
But well, she read it and she was like, well, that sounds pretty amazing. I think she would agree. It's pretty hard. The problem with that though is like peaking so young there, right? You're like, oh, this is amazing, and now it's sort of set this bar to keep working towards. But yeah, the story mostly focuses on just the Rose, but part of the pitch to the publishing houses is that it's going to be part of a series where there's 2 more outlines that I've got drawn up. One's going to be about my time living in the Caribbean, and that one's going to be really interesting. That's going to kind of be sort of like Fear and Loathing Las Vegas meets White Lotus.
I'm like... I was trying to think of something to play on like Pirates of the Caribbean, name for you, but White Privilege of the Caribbean. That must be interesting, like working on the yachts for like the wealthy, and having to kind of manage all that stuff. Is that something that you kind of did as well, or?
I did do that as well, and it It was. I mean, it was interesting and fascinating. At the end of the day, for me, it became hard because I felt in many ways like a glorified bus driver.
Yeah.
Where it's